no greater than receiving a soldier, Major General Sandhu Saab, who has served our country for 37 years. In fact, most people in Pondicherry and in the country are extremely grateful to soldiers like you, who have defended the country. And I'm lucky and blessed to have used Dr. Major General Sandhu and Colonel Verma to come and share your experiences defending the motherland, the great and brave Indian soldier. We are doing this as part of celebrating Sri Aurobindo's 150th anniversary. And he has been one of the great patriots of our country. And the independence of the country was given exactly on the same date as his birthday. So while the country enjoys 75 years of independence, his is the 150th birth anniversary. With this, I will request you to please come and share with us some of your moments, knowing full well that we are really grateful to you.
Thank you so much. So firstly, I would like to thank you, Lalit. When we structured this visit to Pondicherry, one never knew that we were going to meet such wonderful people. And now having got this opportunity, you just mentioned that I've been in the army for 37 years. Actually, I'm 58 years old, and as far as I'm concerned, I've always been in the army because I'm a third generation, which is in the soldiering profession. My father was in the army, so I was actually born into an army family, and even my my grandfather was also for some time in the British Indian Army. So for us, soldiering has been actually a way of life. And when I look back at my journey, I just retired, this year in end January. I joined the profession of soldiering in 1982, and the Indian Army, puts you through a very rigorous training regime, and in our case, it was for 4 years, which included 3 years at the National Defence Academy, which is in Pune, and another 1 year at the Indian Military Academy, which is in Dehradun. So if I count that period, because that was also a period of soldiering, so it is almost 40 years that one has been in this profession of arms. And at times we feel that we have known nothing, no other life but this life. In your case, for you, in the ashram and the way of life over here is the only, or has had a major impact on you. Similarly for us, or for me in particular, it has had a major impact. I have served as part of a fighting unit, throughout my service. In the Indian Army, you have, certain units and formations which are structured for fighting, and there are certain units which are structured for providing the logistics support. So the journey in the army has given me, a very, very huge exposure to various facets of soldiering. It includes, combat experiences in Jammu and Kashmir, in the northeastern part of our country. It has also given me an exposure, an international exposure, where one has served as part of the Indian Army in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as also doing some professional courses abroad in Germany to enhance. In fact, the Indian Army provides you such a broad range of exposure, with the aim being that as a person progresses in service, over a period of time his skills get refined to a level so that he is adept at responding to any kind of challenge that is there. I was very lucky. We have a very, very steep pyramidical system in the army, where for every one person or in fact I would say at the rank of a Major General, maybe not more than just about 0.5% people would reach, and the rest get left out, not for the lack of qualification or abilities, but just because we have a system based on the billets that are available. And so one has been very, very fortunate to have had a great exposure. I have had 2 intense combat experiences in J&K, where I commanded what is known as a Rashtra Rifles Battalion, which was involved in very intense counter-terrorist operations for good about 2 years plus. Then as a brigade commander, again I had a intense combat exposure in again J&K, where along the line of control, we were very, very actively involved. And both these combat experiences also helped, give me a bigger perspective as far as the challenges that India faces. As far as India is concerned, India's geostrategic location is such that no matter what we desire for the foreseeable futures, you will have active and unsettled borders. And when you are having active and unsettled borders, you require some force, you require, the armed forces of a quality and caliber, which do not make the country feel embarrassed at any stage of or any point of time. You all would have, followed the recent crisis that took place with China. And it is not that the Chinese would not have upped the ante in Ladakh, but China, being the larger country, was also apprehensive of getting into a conflict with the Indian Army because it was not very sure about the outcome. And so that is the feeling, or that is how they hold the Indian Army in so much of awe. I would use the word awe, but they look at the Indian Army with a lot of respect. And it has been an honor, to be part of this organization. I had another very interesting experience as a Major General, where I was commanding an infantry division. Now, infantry division has about 20,000 troops, and with a lot of brigades, along the Indo-Pakistan border in Punjab. So while my earlier experiences in J&K were along unsettled conditions, where you had conflict situations, almost on a daily basis. But at the same time, in Punjab, the experience was of a different nature. And while there are no active conflict which is happening along the Indo-Pak border in China, in Punjab, but still the situation is of a nature that the challenges are multifarious and varied. So this is as far as my background is concerned. In fact, one thing that I forgot to mention earlier, as far as the Indian Army is concerned, to a very I would use the word a small segment. In fact, in a very large segment of the society, the profession of soldiering is almost a way of life. In my case, I never looked at the profession of soldiering as a job, though in effect it was a job. However, for me it was a way of life. And again, in my larger family, everybody is in the army, and it is not for want of better opportunities, but everybody felt it was a very neat, clean way of serving the country. And my wife again comes from an army family, so it has given us a very, very good exposure to a way of life, which I feel it is as good as serving God, because in effect we are serving the country. And I will also talk to you, I would like to mention about the Indian Army soldier. While the officers today, in the past you had the officers coming from a background which was, very, very accomplished, or maybe, a well-off kind of a background. Today, you have the officers coming from a wide spectrum and strata of the society. And like I mentioned to you, I trained for almost 4 years. And as far as the Indian Army soldier is concerned, across the board, and I'm sure your brother will also agree, when we go on missions with the United Nations abroad, when we are interacting with soldiers of other countries, when we are interacting with soldiers of or officers of other countries, and incidentally, when we go on these UN missions, we have a lot of exposure and interaction with the Pakistani army as well, the Chinese, PLA as well. And across the board, without any hesitation, there is an acknowledgement about the capability and the what should I say, the capability of the Indian Army soldier. And when you look at the Indian Army soldier, he's anybody, from any from any village or any town in small town in any part of India. But the kind of training that he's put through, the kind of the ethos that are ingrained in a soldier, thereafter this person is willing to die. In fact, I have been in numerous combat situations where there was always the threat to life. One has seen people dying in front of your eyes or in front of, right next to you. But I have never come across a situation where any soldier has questioned the orders of an officer. So actually, when I tell you that, what does it tell you? It tells you that firstly, the soldier accepts the fact that the officer who's giving him the orders is possibly, at a level where he's absolutely clear in his mind as to the orders that he's giving are absolutely correct. And the second thing is he's absolutely sure about the training that has been provided to him, and he actually doesn't fear, the consequences of doing a particular thing. I take my mind back to 1992. This is the day this incident happened at Babri Masjid. That very day, we were involved in an operation at a height of almost about 13,000 feet in J&K, and we had got an information that a group of terrorists possibly is likely to cross from a particular area, and so naturally we had to do something to counter it. The weather at that point of time it had snowed extremely heavily, and when we went to the likely area where we intended to stop these people, and the information that had been given to us is possibly about 8 or 10 people will be crossing this particular area. The snow was definitely more than my waist level. We had been given a general, time when these people are likely to cross, but at the same time, we were not very sure whether it is going to be today, tomorrow, and in any case, there was no question of taking a chance that somebody is allowed to get through. So we were a group of just about 14 people waiting for this situation to unfold in front of us, and it was late in the night, maybe about 30 hours, maybe 8:30 in the evening, and for a few hours snow is manageable, but we sat through that place throughout that night. There was no movement that took place, and we kept thinking that possibly the information that we had got was not very good, and so we tried to confirm to some people, and they said no, the information seems to be quite accurate. So we were two officers and a group of about 14 Jawans who were there. Not once during those 36 hours that we were there in that situation was anybody feeling that we should get back, or the situation was not too good, because being in a particular in the same location for an extended period. While we were well equipped, we were well clothed, but we had to wait for 36 hours. And thereafter, we had this strange situation at 8:30 in the night, and this was the second day, so we were almost close to about 36 hours in that same location. And suddenly, we see this horde of people crossing. And I would not like you to relate it to the situation as it happens today, which is 2022, because the situation is much better. It is very well controlled. But I am talking to you of 1992, when the situation was very, very fluid. So we had these almost about 50 odd terrorists who were coming into the general direction where we all were located. And obviously we had to neutralize these people. There was a fierce firefight that took place. Number of these guys were eliminated, and by God's grace we absolutely suffered no casualties. And of course when this firefight is taking place in the night, it was a pitch dark night, but because of the snow, there is some visibility that is there. And in the morning, of course, when we got up, when the sunlight started filtering through or when the light started coming out at about 4:35 in the morning, and then we realized the mayhem that was there. Obviously, since the location that we selected was such that under no circumstances anybody should be able to get in. It should not happen that while we are able to kill XYZ or neutralize XYZ, the others are able to get in. So it was a total success, and possibly that operation got overshadowed because of the other incident that I told you happened in December of 1992. But coming back to the Indian Army soldier, during that night when that combat was unfolding, there were so many orders, directions that were given to people to cut off. Somebody who's trying to get away from some other side, somebody who's trying to get away from some other side. And at no stage during this period was anybody having any hesitation in what needed to be done. So coming back to what I mentioned about the Indian Army soldier, in fact, this nation is blessed that it has the people of this caliber. The other good thing about the Indian Army is that it is actually a national integration in motion. While when we go around the country, everybody desires to have national integration, but this is one place where you have actually a national integration in motion. And in the fighting arms, we have a regimental system. So to give you an example, we have something known as the Madras Regiment. Now the Madras Regiment is an infantry regiment. It has about 20 battalions, but it does not mean that they are all from Madras or Tamil Nadu. They are from the general area of, let us say, Tamil Nadu, Kerala. But the beauty is that each one of them is able to speak Tamil, and nobody feels. In fact, the officers also, I'm a Sikh officer. I'm not from the Madras Regiment, but I have so many of my batchmates and postmates who have joined the Madras Regiment and have thereafter gone to learn Tamil. And like you are so fluent. But for us, the life of the Jawan where you are going to serve with is almost like, or the religion of the Jawan with whom you are serving, or in effect becomes your own religion. So, and similarly, I have a lot of friends who are in the Sikh regiment. In fact, a very good friend of mine, General P.G.K. Menon, he is a Keralite, but he observes the functions and rituals of the Sikhs, maybe at the same level as to which he, observes his own customs and religion. And we have also a very good system, and I haven't, seen in my 37 years of, service, I haven't seen anybody, cribbing or even, mentioning that, why should I be doing this? So, the Indian Army is also actually, like I said, it is a national integration in progress. Every unit, and Mohit will also bear with me, in fact, there is absolute freedom for everybody to follow the kind of rituals or the religion that he follows. But everything happens in something called a Sarv Dharam Sthal. So it is like, you have the medium machine gun, it is referred to as MMG. In a lot of units, the Sarv Dharam Sthal is also referred to as the MMG, where it is Mandir, Masjid and Gurdwara. So at the same place. So you may very well have the the priests or the Dharam Gurus or the whoever they are there. In fact, there were a number of times where a particular priest, because all units do have priests or Dharam Gurus or whatever. Everybody takes on the religion of the unit or of the regiment to which he belongs. And to that extent, I would say that while India faces a lot of challenges, India is also blessed that we have over a period of time since 1947 been able to provide our armed forces an environment in which not only they have remained true to the democratic traditions that this nation has, it has also provided the country a very, very strong asset which has withstood all kinds of challenges. And like I said, India is in an environment which for the foreseeable future is going to remain unstable. And so that way the Indian Army provides a very, very great, it is a great asset as far as our country is concerned. I just highlighted something. In fact, I would, anybody, if anybody has any questions or anything that you would, you want to interact with, maybe I feel, rather than getting into some sort of a monologue, I can, actually carry on. But if there is anything that, anybody feels or you want to, suggest, because while I am no longer a serving army officer, but like I said, for the 58 years that I have been alive, the olive green uniform, I have seen it almost, every day of these last 58 years. So anybody has any questions?
So I have always been wondering that the Indian soldier is an exceptional human being. He fights for the country, he defends us and keeps us all safe. But in the Indian Army, we also have the Gurkha Regiment. And the other day I met a Gurkha Regiment, and I asked him that what would you do if you have to fight against Nepal? Of course, he warded it off by saying that no, kabhi hoega nahi sahab, hum log ka treaty hai, but he is not an Indian. How is it that they also fight with the similar motivation?
So, I will just give you, some, this is not actually a statistical data, but you'll be surprised that a large number of Nepalese who serve in the Indian Army after they have served in the Indian Army, they actually settle down in India. So, there are places in Dehradun, there are places in near Dalhousie, Paklo, there in Shillong. You will be surprised that the number of Nepalese who served the Indian Army, they actually, end up settling there. One possibly is they feel that possibly the opportunities are better. But at the same time, the service that they have within the army also provides them a broadside view of the development that takes place in India and the good things that they see over here. So they feel naturally inclined to either settle down here and Lalit, I must also tell you, the Indian Army has a fantastic system of looking after their Jawans. Now, while it is very easy to look after a retired Indian Army soldier in India, but just imagine doing this in Nepal, in absolute inaccessible places of Nepal. So, through our embassy that is there and through our various, the Indian Army has established a lot of centers in Nepal, whose charter is to look after the retired ex-service, retired, Nepalese soldiers in Nepal. And you will be also surprised that when Nepal went through this Maoist insurgency, there was really no issue that happened as far as India is concerned. So they were very clear, about their allegiances to India. I have also incidentally served, when I was a Siberia commander, there was a certain group of people who was, meant to support that Siberia in terms of administrative. They were all from the Gurkha Regiment. And those 2 years, 2.5 years, I got an opportunity to serve very closely with the Gurkha soldiers. And I don't think so you will ever have a situation, where there would be a need to, though China would definitely, look to create that sort of a situation. But notwithstanding, in every unit there is an ideal mix of Indian domiciled Gurkhas and Nepalese, domiciled Gurkhas. And one has total faith. In fact, out of the last 4 chiefs of army staff that we've had, including General Rawat, who unfortunately died. Then prior to him, General Sohag was there. They were both from the Gurkha regiment. And the Gurkha soldier has proved himself worthy of the trust. Over the years. Over the years, in fact, every year in J&K, along the line of control, the casualties that we have, a large number of Gurkha soldiers who give up their lives. And in fact, I must also tell you that while at times one does get disturbed by the at times one feels that there is a lot of turbulence in the Indian hinterland, but throughout my 37 years of service, I have operated across caste, creed in terms of the soldiers. There has never been any situation where one has found that anybody's credibility or anybody's trust was lacking. So, any other anything that you feel you can contribute, and maybe then I could also or some perception that you have about the Indian Army, one would definitely
might be a sensitive question. So, when you're talking to me today about when you met the Chinese counterpart, and probably I don't know which year it was, but you did mention probably that was the last occasion where there was.
Lalit, the flyer that you made, it has some photographs of mine with certain soldiers. So they are all soldiers of the People's Liberation Army. So prior to this problem that we had with China in Ladakh and along the northern borders, especially in the northeastern parts of our country, we had established a system of having exercises with various countries whom we interact with, and China was one of them. So these exercises were being held on a bilateral basis, where at some point of time these exercises were held in India, and at the same time they would reciprocate by calling our soldiers and our troops for exercises on their side. And these are also very healthy occasions that one gets to interact with soldiers of different armies, because it gives you a perspective about their capabilities, the capabilities of their officers, because naturally whenever any contingent comes, the officers do come along with them, the quality of the weapons that they have. It also gives you some kind of it helps you to do a SWOT analysis about the strength, weakness, opportunities and the threats that are there as far as your adversaries are concerned. So to that extent, we had this exercise in late 2019, and all exercises with China were being categorized under a heading called hand in hand. So we had this exercise in 2019 in Shillong. There's a place called Umroi, which is near their capital. And one got an opportunity to speak to an officer, a general who had come from there, and of course these group of about 200 odd Chinese PLA soldiers and their officers. And I was quite enthused to see that while they were very well trained, but the structuring within our army was better in terms of having multiple levels of supervision. Like we have one level of supervision in the form of officers, then the next level of supervision you have in the Indian Army in the form of junior commissioned officers, and then you have the non-commissioned officers. In fact, this recent conflict that is happening between Ukraine and Russia, one of the major failings that has been found as far as Russia is concerned is the absence of a non-commissioned officer, cadre. So as a result, between the troops who are fighting, the next level of connect is the officer. So there is no mid-level, connect, which makes it easier, which makes it difficult to at times, implement orders. And as such, you find in Ukraine, Russia has suffered multiple officer level casualties, because with the absence of non-commissioned officers, you have the officers who have to come down, to the troops to ensure that the orders are executed or implemented, and possibly expose themselves to a hostile situation where there is a likelihood of casualties happening. And as far as my own son is concerned, we were very keen, and possibly he also had the same level of passion that your son has. But at times all good things must come to an end. So he had a flat foot condition. So and in the Indian Army there is absolutely no way, even if anybody can help you, if at the time of entry into the army where there is anything lacking as far as physical capability is concerned, Mohit will also agree to it. So but all in all, it's been a great experience meeting you and the family, because last couple of visits that one has had to Pondicherry, one came in as a tourist, but maybe now one has got to meet people in a family kind of environment, and that has been so very, very good. Yeah.
So one question. So when you say Indian Army, it means security, right? Security. So the word security, what is like? How is the Indian Army is Indian Army participating in security on multiple levels? So let's say there is agricultural security, there is educational security. There's so many levels of security, right? So if let's say you address maybe a security, for example, at the root cause, right? And then the other factors will take care of itself.
So I can answer that question in 2-3 parts. So, the Indian Army is actually structured in a manner that any breakdown of any established system that happens in India, whether it is a security situation on the borders, whether there is an internal security situation, there is a breakdown of law and order, or for that matter, there is a natural calamity. We are structured to deal with every kind of a situation. But like in any kind of a democratic setup, there are stakeholders who are responsible for each thing in, natural, peacetime conditions. And that is how it should be. In fact, when you look at the example across the border in Pakistan, possibly they followed a different model where, they started, intervening in, various things which were not their normal charter. And as a result, you find that slowly but steadily, the systems get eroded. So that way, the Indian Army can actually respond. You will be surprised that we have got something called the Territorial Army concept. Now, tomorrow, if let us say, and recently, just a couple of months back, a month back, there was a situation of everybody in Chandigarh went on a strike. The electricity people went on a strike. Now, to a normal civilian, he's not too sure whether the army is geared up to react to this kind of a situation. But yes, it is. And actually, the state, but only when the administration requests and we have a very good system within our country where multiple levels of responsibility are there. And for the armed forces, while they are controlled by the central government, but any established and responsible state government or any designated authority which is given that authority can ask for the support of the Indian Army. There is, till very recently we had something called the Territorial Army Railways. So that was structured way back, a long time back, on the thought process that if for some reason, the railways were to go on strike, and some critical, requirements are there, then who's going to run the rail? Because if the people who run the rails, they go on strike, but you can't have the nation, and similarly, a lot of capabilities have been developed by the army. And like I said, when I'm talking of security, internal, external, and natural disasters, they are the biggest manifestations of security which could affect the common man. As far as food security and all are concerned, that would be more in the domain of the civilian authorities, and I'm sure India today is at a level where we don't think so should be reaching ever a situation of this kind. But yes, in fact, I must also tell you, since I had the opportunity of serving at various levels, the central governments and a large number of state governments. When I say large number, it is only because I am talking of those governments where I had an exposure. They are absolutely well primed and well equipped to handle any kind of situation. And today, the reason why a lot of foreign countries do look up to India is also because they feel India is a reliable partner because it has these expertise, of the kind. And I must also tell you that a lot of these helps or a lot of these capabilities that we have developed, we are able to exploit these capabilities in United Nations, environment. When India, in fact, India has an impeccable record as far as peacekeeping is concerned. Whether it is Congo, whether it is Sudan, whether it is Lebanon, and you name it, every part of the world, wherever peacekeeping operations have had, the Indian Army has acquitted itself so well. And it is not only at the level of security, it is at the level of disaster management, it is providing food security. In genocide type of conditions, especially in eastern Congo, when this problem happened in Rwanda, a lot of influx or outgo of refugees had taken place on this side also. So those skills are there, and the Indian Army is absolutely well capable and poised to take on any challenges for that matter.
Do you think in the education system the Indian Army should embed some sort of a ethos, but on a smaller scale into the educational system?
You know, let me tell you, I was also before my retirement, and that was for different reasons, but it gave me an exposure, of this kind. There is something called the National Cadet Corps, the NCC. The NCC pan-India, the responsibility is there with the Ministry of Defence, and on behalf of the Ministry of Defence, it is the Indian Army that quits that responsibility. I was responsible for the NCC operations in the states of Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, and Chandigarh, and I had almost about 175,000 children who were right immediately as part of my responsibility. And when you are talking of the providing them that kind of education, providing that kind of platform, it is exactly what we were doing, and with the thought process that look, it is not that the children who join the NCC are to be a feeder for the armed forces, but it is to provide, to ensure that we are able to groom responsible citizens who can then take on leadership positions in any field of life. And we work on that role model system, where if you are able to create more number of role models. Incidentally, this gentleman, one of our great soldiers, Vikram Batra, who is Paramveer Chakra, he is an alumni of one of the NCC units of Chandigarh. So he is a role model for large number of people, and who necessarily may not be wanting to join the armed forces. Somebody may be becoming a doctor, somebody may be becoming an engineer, and what have you. So the National Cadet Corps is again pan-India. There are almost 10 lakhs children who are, and possibly there are some units here in Pondicherry as well. And you will be surprised that they do provide the local schools, colleges a very great foundation, and the children are very interested. Till I actually went there, I thought possibly it was a unidirectional kind of an activity. But then when I went there, I would be approached by parents of multiple number of children that look, my son or daughter has not been given admission into, he or she was very keen to join, but he hasn't. And then I possibly realized that, it is the investment that this nation has done has started, developing some kind of results, because now there is a pull that is happening from the other side, where people are saying that, no, I want to be there because it gives me value. And for us, while we are overtly not trying to push this issue of nationalism, but the fact of the matter is it automatically comes because of the credibility of the organization that is imparting that kind of training or grooming as far as the children are concerned.
So when, for example, when Obama gives a talk in the G4 summit and all, and says that there is a rise of nationalism in some countries and all of that. So in India, when I'm a nationalist, for me, my country, I will do anything for the idea, because if you see America, the life, liberty, in pursuit of happiness, and so on and so forth. But India is literally that. But I know it has been convoluted in many ways. So what would you say to that?
So I will only answer from the perspective of my experience in the army, and I would just say keep doing the right thing, and as long as you keep doing the right thing, and as an organization, the armed forces, I'm sure you are aware, there have been multiple surveys done, and every second, third year there is a survey done in terms of what is the perception of people regarding various organizations, various institutions. The Indian Army only ranks very high in all those surveys only for one reason, that it has just remain focused and let other people do the jobs that are supposed to. Why we are different from certain countries which have not followed this model is that where one person decided that I must take on everybody's role, and then it became different. So as far as nationalism is concerned, we are throughout our 40 years, we fought for the flag, we have fought and we have lost people, and we have actually carried people who've been bleeding or who died, and so we understand the pain, the suffering that goes to defending the border, defending the nation, so to say. And I can give you at least that assurance that as far as the Indian Army is concerned, it is absolutely committed day in and day out. In fact, I don't think so throughout my last 40 years I could say I had a 9 to 5 job. My job was 24/7, and actually there were times when you would be told at 2 o'clock. In fact, when Op Barakram happened, when this deployment took place on the Indo-Pak border, we were told at 2 o'clock in the morning. So and we knew that is how it is. So but yes, these are and these are challenges. These are challenges that are there, and they are challenges because the world is changing. The world is changing, and but at the same time, while the world may change, while any kind of turbulence will be there, but if people who are responsible to do certain things, if they remain well trained, well motivated, they will ensure that no turbulence is allowed to affect you.
I have a question, sir. Just talking about the pain and suffering that the soldiers go through. Just curious to know what steps are taken to sort of support their mental, psychological health.
I must tell you that a lot is being done, and I have retired. Last night, when we were there at we had gone to Aurobindo, I was getting calls from a soldier who had from my unit who had retired almost 8 years back. He makes it a point to ring me up. He also knows that I am retired. My capability to possibly help him is limited, but it almost becomes like a family that you have done. But we just don't leave it at that. That we are all part of the family. So let us all suffer together. The organization, the Indian Army, is a beautiful organization where at every level, as far as the physical well-being is concerned, the organization is absolutely is the best amongst the world. But to address the issue of psychological issues, because people do get the post-traumatic stress disorders.
All the blood.
Yes, it does happen. It does happen, and every unit which is which is involved in combat, and I was mentioning just before you came that every unit does not get involved in combat. So there are certain units that do combat, there are certain units that support combat. So the likelihood of stress type of situations is more in units which are into combat, and there every unit has people who are designated as psychological counselors who are there, who almost are looking at you not only from a psychological perspective, they are also looking at you from a spiritual perspective, and to ensure that people who are especially vulnerable, and more so, as earlier, when let us say, if you take your mind back to 20-25 years back, the Indian Army soldier who joined, he came from a joint family system. Now the joint families have actually broken down even in villages. where everybody is, the joint family support is not there. So today a soldier may not actually face stress disorder. I mean, he may still be able to weather the psychological trauma of seeing somebody dying, because it may be momentary or it may take some time. At times, he is more bothered about the conditions in his home, because earlier, his wife could only communicate to him through letters. Letters took time to come. And at times, by the time he got that letter, the situation that was of creating stress for his family back home had already sorted out. But now, on a daily basis, there's an interaction taking place. And so we have systems where, across India, we have people who have been designated to interact with the state governments to help people resolve their issues. Because everything that creates stress needs to be looked at in a holistic kind of a manner. So for the psychological issues arising out of conflict or combat, we have the psychological counselors and all that are there. And to create other and to redress or ameliorate other conditions like stress out of family situations happening back home. The soldier may be deployed in Sikkim, or he may be deployed in Arunachal, and suddenly he gets a call from his father that, look, somebody has taken away our land and encroached upon our land. Now you are expecting him to give him his 100%, in the situation that is there on the Indo-China border. But at the same time, he is also worried that people back home are so we do take those issues also. And I must also tell you, we have a system that even when a Jawan retires, like for central government employees, you have the CGHS, we have what is known as the ECHS. There is a system of pensions that a Jawan gets. The moment a Jawan dies, his wife, why? Even if a Jawan dies today and he had, let us say, 14 years of service left, so his wife gets the same pay that he was supposed to have got for that entire duration that he would have remained in service, and thereafter, as far as his pension and all are concerned. So yes, there are, I won't say that there are no issues, but they are looked at in a very, very, and like I said, the moment a Jawan realizes that, I'm part of a family. I could speak to this chap who was ringing me up last night, but then I made it a point in the morning to give him a call and find out as to why he was ringing me up. And then of course he, told me some issues that he was having. And so the fact that he knows he's part of a larger, familial kind of a background or a setup also does help. But in a structured manner, this issue of stress, in fact, there was a period about 10 years back where a lot of Jawans were, committing suicides at various places along the borders, because, somebody can take stress, somebody cannot take stress, and suddenly, he gets to know that his wife has run away with somebody, and now he is there. He actually can't do anything. So somebody with possibly a lesser, capabilities to handle stress feels that the only way to solve this is, by shooting himself. And there was a period about 10 years back where these cases were far and plenty. But now, as statistically when we look at it, they have been reduced to very, very manageable levels. And in fact, those levels, these issues are across the world. When you look at the American Army also, or the US Army, they are faced with a similar type of situations. The post-traumatic stress disorders, Jawans troops committing suicide, and such like things. But within the resources and the capabilities that we have as a nation, I think so we've done reasonably well. Though it would be incorrect to say that we are the best in the world, but on this aspect we've done reasonably well. But in terms of sheer quality, the fact, and I was mentioning this earlier, that the Chinese did not take that extra step, because they were not too sure as to how it would pan out. the biggest challenge that a bully has, when he is dealing with, somebody who's not as strong as him, he is always one. If he is absolutely sure that he can, bulldoze his way through, he will bulldoze it. But when does he hold back? When he's not too sure as to how this whole thing will, unfold. And once it unfolds, if it does not unfold well for him, how would that help him in his, image that he has in the world? And possibly that is what China, actually held back. And otherwise, I'm sure they would have wanted to push India even more. But when they realized that this push is not, leading to anything and may actually backfire, then they actually, took 2 steps back as well. Anything, anybody?
We can talk for hours, but
Yes.
I can talk stories, but
I'll tell you what, let's take 2 more questions.
yeah.
That way we will be within.
I have one. While you mentioned you were commanding a division in Punjab border. What is the interaction between the army, or how deep is it with the BSF?
So, in peacetime conditions, the responsibility of the border is with the border security force. But we are also aware that, if the situations, goes bad, and if hostilities do break out at the end of the day, it is we who are responsible for maintaining the sanctity of the border. So we are, fully aware of everything, that is happening. And I must tell you, with technology is changing the battlefield almost, I wouldn't say on a day, on a yearly basis. It is almost changing it on a daily basis. Drones have now, drones and the lethality which they can provide to anybody for that matter. And today drones can be used in absolutely innovative manners. So we found that in Punjab to a large extent, where while we have a border fencing, but the amount of drones that are being used, by smugglers and what have you, just to push across drugs, on our side, and we work on a thumb rule concept that for every thing that gets intercepted by the BSF or the police, there are still some numbers that go through. So when we do our analysis, we are quite cognizant about the. But having said that, I must also say that our Central Armed Police Forces, and in this we categorize the BSF, the CRPF in this category. They are well trained, and the Indian Army coordinates very, very well with them, because at the end of the day it is a layered kind of a defense where somebody in peacetime is responsible for the border. But we are also aware that if we do not coordinate and interact with them, then possibly our ability to refine our refine the situation on a very interactive kind of a process that will actually suffer. But I must also say that of late you have seen, especially in J&K and as far as Pakistan is concerned, that the level of violence that is normally pushed through by Pakistan is reduced to a large extent. And it is reduced to a large extent also because of the fact that the people who do these kind of activities have realized that possibly their ability to have a free run is very, very limited. It is very, very limited. And I must also tell you, at times people do, when you go onto Twitter, when you go onto social media, and one does understand the angst that people have, especially the civilian, population, that do this or do that, or destroy everybody, or etc., etc. The Indian Army today is recognized across the world for only one reason, that against our population, it may be friendly, it may not be friendly, because especially in areas wherever insurgency has happened, it has happened in the northeast, in a lot of these states, where now it has almost been brought down to negligible levels. The Indian Army has never used, heavy weapons. If you take your mind, if you just cross the border into Pakistan, they are using aircrafts and they are using heavy artillery, and because we have absolutely come to the conclusion that at the end of the day, every person who's living within the borders of India, it is quite possible that somebody may have, deviated from the right path, but possibly there is a better way of getting him around. And rather than, creating a condition where our actions create fertile environments, for such people to breed further. And so at times you find that possibly for us, it takes a longer period to achieve it. But then it is also with a very conscious thought that we must not alienate the population. And I'm sure you all will agree that in any environment, whether it is in J&K, whether it is in the northeast, especially in areas where there has been a problem, 90% of the population is absolutely not interested in violence. It is only a very, very minuscule minority, and within that minuscule minority also it is a very, very limited people, who want to follow, a more militant or a very, very, deviant kind of a path. So, and possibly these are the successes also that the army has made. In fact, the insurgency that was there in Mizoram, today Mizoram is one of the most peaceful states, and at one point of time it was like a battlefield. Nagaland, the problem has been resolved to a very, very, large level. But when you are looking at, issues that have originated from history or from historical, lapses, then at times they take a little longer period. And that way, India, being the larger country with more resources, and India is very resilient. At no stage has India ever felt that, X state or Y state where some problem is taking place, it is not manageable. At no stage has India ever felt, and possibly that is a reflection of India's strength and India's diversity also, where you always feel that, while this problem is there of an immediate nature, we can always, sort it out. It may take some time, but we will ultimately, get it done.
Yeah,
So I guess
lovely. No, we can go on.
we can actually, yes. That's it.
Voter science.
Yeah, come Mohit.
No, please be seated.
Please be seated.
Oh.
So,
We request him to do the vote of thanks. What's
Okay.
the
is it all right?
Yeah.
Well, Sandhu sir, thank you very much for this wonderful talk that you gave us. And I know it was a short notice, and maybe that's the reason we couldn't get too many people. But I'm sure next time the crowd is going to be unmanageable, and especially after people listen to this talk. And I must tell you, because I also have an army background, that behind this facade of a humble demeanor, there's someone who can handle the most brutal and dangerous situations with ease. Maybe he's not come out with a lot of events or incidents that he's faced in his life. A person from infantry is someone, and especially an infantry officer of the Indian Army, is actually, I have no doubt, is actually the best in the world.
But since Mohit is also an aviator, and I must tell you that I have intense respect for the Indian Army aviators, because that incident that I was mentioning to you, where we had this firefight in December of 1992, and while it went clockwork precision, and the whole operation culminated very, very successfully. But thereafter, in a separate incident, we suddenly, out of nowhere, we lost 3 Jawans. And the 3 of them were all wounded in front of our eyes. They were all alive, So the challenge was to have them evacuated from the conflict situation or the place where they had got wounded to be taken to Srinagar, where the base hospital was there. So the moment this people, these three of them, they felt they were very badly wounded, all three of them. So the information flow started, and the chopper, there was a chopper already in the sky near Kupwara, and Kupwara is just about, from that place it may be 20 minutes to the line of control, and we were told that the chopper is already en route. And of course, I was part of that group of people that was evacuating these three people who were absolutely bloodied, from head to toe. But somebody was always, touching them and to find out that some lips are twitching. So that feeling was there that possibly they are still alive. And I also mentioned to you that it had snowed very heavily. So every place we were down, except the track, since we were using it on a daily basis, had been beaten. But everything else was covered with snow, and like I said, in places they were at to the waist level, and especially in the valleys it was even more. Now we could see the chopper, and we started going down, and in any case the chopper could not have landed on a slope, so we had to go down, and we were carrying, these Jawans were carrying these three bodies, and we were almost running, and I can tell you that anything beyond 9,000, the lack of oxygen also starts hurting you, but we were still running because we thought that possibly, everything that can be done to save their lives. Then the pilot started interacting with us, and he said, where do I land? There's no place to land. And actually, because there was no place he could land, because everything was covered with snow, and or it was sloping. There was only, and we came to a little clearing, and graziers from they go up to the hills during summer season to take, for all those who have been to Kashmir or Himachal, at times when you are traveling, you find people moving with 500 goats into the hills. So these are people who go, and they make their little bit habitation over there. So there was one place which was covered with snow, and it was a roof. So the pilot took the decision that, look, I am going to come on top of that roof. The pilot didn't know how strong that roof was. The pilot did not know whether that roof will take the weight of that helicopter. But he took that decision, and because literally, that everybody was in that supercharged state that somehow these people should live. And the pilot landed the thing over there, and it must have been something like Mohit only. And of course, now the other problem that happened was that he could only take 2 casualties. The third one, there was no space for them, and possibly if a casualty was to be seated, he could still have put 3. They were all in a condition where none of them could have actually sat also. But somehow he came out, one of them came out, he strapped all of them, and so I'm sure Mohit has done similar kind of activities, and when the helicopter took off, we all started praying that maybe if the pilot has taken that thing, we have reached that place, possibly these are all good signs. Unfortunately, all 3 of them died, and but till today I can't forget that pilot, and who took that decision to land, because he could have very well, and nobody could have faulted him, because he actually broke protocol coming into that thing. So the army allows you these kind of challenges, and possibly these are memories that we will we will leave with. But
so this is one of the reasons why you see the Indian Army function so well, because every arm has respect for the other. So finally, I just like to say that every time you join the army, you learn certain things, and sir is a 3rd generation, so he's actually a thoroughbred army officer. And we in the army, we actually look for these people of, whose parents have been in the army and grandfather, because they are people who are there in the army for the love of the army and for the nation. So we can't have anyone better than that. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your service.